We had scammers in our restaurant right now, pretending they're social media at Mesa. So they're trying to order all free food and get all this free food. And like,
What?
this is all happening as I'm driving here. So my GM calls and I'm like, well, what the heck? Bobby's on vacation. I'm like, it's not on our calendars. But I'm like, I don't want to, upset him if it's legit. So I had to call Bobby on vacation. She's like, I'll call down there. So my GM's like, hey man, they're scammers.
So what's their MO?
They just came in and they said, yeah, we're here to do some social media stuff, take some photos of the food. So let's, we're gonna get ordering some dishes.
They must hit up a bunch of restaurants
So
doing this.
yeah,
then.
my general manager was not there. He ran a quick errand to pick something up. So he called. He's like, hey, these people are at the restaurant. I'm like, it's not on my calendar, man. I don't like. I
But
don't.
What the heck?
But yeah, they're probably banking on the manager thinking that the owner or somebody sent them there. So the manager's like,
Yeah,
oh,
no,
okay, what do you want?
They said my name. They
they
said my name.
they
So
they did their research.
You would not do that much research just for lunch. Like,
I don't know.
just to
but
eat free lunch?
they're-
You're going to do all that research and act like, just make 20 bucks
You know
instead.
what? Yeah, if only criminals would, take all their efforts into doing something good,
Right.
this world would be a better place.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Well-
they could make a living, an honest living.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. So you own Los Sombreros. It's a Mexican cuisine
Correct.
restaurant.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
like sort of a chain within Phoenix, right?
Yeah. I don't know if we want to use the word change just yet, but
Yeah.
there's three of them. We have several partners. Jeff, my first partner, Jeff, and I bought it in June of 2017.
So it was existing.
Correct. Yeah. So it started in 1994,
Oh, wow.
and then both of us actually worked at Los Sombreros as hourly employees. So right after college, I opened it up, as a server. I worked at the old spot that was just about a mile south of where we currently are in Scottsdale, and I was there for about 2 years on and off. I was trying to live the dream playing baseball still, so I got cut from a team out in Louisiana during that process. And also during that process, I would leave and open up these Black Bear diners as a server trainer, a group that my dad was a part of. So after about 2 years, and once I got cut, they asked me if I want to move out to Vegas and manage Black Bears or whatever. But anyways, that's where I started my management career.
And then, so or is each store you're working with a different partner? Or you just started the first
So
one?
Jeff and I think about 2 years into it is when we brought Adam and Bobby in, and their husband wife. Bobby we call her the Jill of all trades, so she helps out with PR, marketing, social, admin stuff, kind of a little bit of everything. So she helped me out with the other concept that I was operating, which was Smash Burger. And then Adam was a GM with Smashburger, and then when I left, he became an area manager. So both of them came on to help us expand it.
So yeah, just stepping back a little bit. So you were working with the Black Bear Diner,
Yep.
and you had worked at Los Sombreros, so you knew the guys. How did it come about where you had the opportunity to purchase the company?
So
restaurant?
I was in there March of 17, and there wasn't any business really in there. I had a small team of managers that I had in there, and the server said, yeah, it wasn't going too good. I opened up the restaurant with that particular server, so he and I had a report, and he said, yeah, things aren't going all that great. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, if anything ever happens, just have someone call me. I'll buy it. And just threw that out there. And 3 months later, I got a text that it was for sale.
Wow. When you buy a restaurant like this, an existing business, at the time, how many locations they have? Just the one, or did
Just had the one. Just had the one.
on Scottsdale Road?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, and I had owned nothing, so I had just left my job as a regional director of operations for Black Bear in November of 16, and was creating my concept, a different concept, and was at the tail end of getting ready to launch it. And my former boss called me and said, "Hey, let me fly you out to Denver. There's a position opening where." Potentially you could have ownership a couple different ways. It'd be the same deal as what we did with Smashburger, where we opened 14 in 4 years, sold them. He said, we want to rapidly grow this Italian concept, so you'd probably have ownership on both sides, franchisee and on the corporate side. So I said, all right. And, he was excited about it. He said, I know where your head's at. I know you're excited about launching your concept, but, at least take a look at it for me. So I did. And then, yeah, it happened, super fast. I told my wife before I hopped on the plane, we're going to have a tough decision, and then jumped on the plane. And then there's the text message from my buddy whose mom got both Jeff and I the job there. She still's a server there. So it's just kind of all came full circle. And here we are. So it's been an adventure, to say the least.
When you buy an existing restaurant, how do you value the business? How do you know how much it's worth? Do you look at profits?
Yeah, so I think that there's probably like a standard way of probably doing this, right? As far as like multiple the EBITDA, and if you're gonna do 2-3 times, or if it's a bigger concept, 5, or hopefully get to 7 times, or hopefully get to 10 times.
Yeah.
So the restaurant didn't have a whole lot of revenue at the time. It was
That
only
could be
open
a
for
good
dinner.
opportunity, right?
She had ran it. There were some profits on the table, but just knowing the history and the chef behind it, he now currently owns a Lotte up in Sedona, and he's a 2-time James Beard nominee chef. I mean, the food's very, very good. So we knew that we could operate the heck out of it and grow the sales and grow the brand. So the number wasn't, I feel like we overpaid as far as an EBITDA standpoint, but we underpaid as far as just knowing what we could do with it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What was that original concept you were working on yourself?
It was a healthy employee-based concept, where I guess Flower Child would be, top of mind as far as what they've done now. The first go around is with the drive-through. The second round wasn't going to be with the drive-through, but it was kind of all for the employees. It was just like you'd go show up to work, you do yoga and meditate. We'd have a separate room before you'd clock in, do yoga and meditate before you start your shifts, just to kind of get everyone centered for the day. And then we would also have a leadership development program built into that. So it wasn't really so much like a job as an employee. You'd be going into it as like, I'm here to further kind of just myself as far as my development on my path. So the hope was to, be able to, do multiple of these concepts, and to, give them a career path if they choose to stay with us. And if they wanted to, obviously exit, then they would have some tools in their, in their sleeve, up their sleeve from the experience.
What inspired you to want to like help people grow their growing skills? Is that what they're doing? Growing their leadership skills?
Yeah.
Is it a profit-oriented business, or is it more of like a passion?
No, just a personal passion thing. So we did this without knowing what we were doing with Smashburger. When we first launched it, we were opening up a restaurant about once every 3 months, and I think it was probably store 5 or 6 is when I had a lot of frustrations. We had a lot of young managers and doing a lot of silly, just stupid things that I did when I was a young manager as well. And I had this moment just driving, like, man, if I could teach everyone like what I know, how do I teach everyone what I know through my experience like yesterday? So I went home, I wrote Staying Ahead of the Game, and I thought it was going to be like a one sheet. It ended up being like 4 pages long about just setting yourself up. And through that, I then started grabbing the team, and we started doing like having them read leadership books, and they would do a book report for me. And then we started having these monthly meetings with the shift managers, the assistant managers, the general managers, and we would just we would just talk, and I'd show them different videos that I'd pull up on YouTube or whatever the case is. And Smashburger did a good job also. They, a few years into it, they actually had a psychologist come in, and he would do leadership development once a quarter as well. So they started adding tools to the kit, and we just kind of started going like, hey, this isn't just a job. This can be bigger. We're not just kind of smashing burgers over here. You can grow with the company. You can grow within. You can actually have a job where you have fun. You enjoy going to work. We can be professional but keep it light, and also just kind of learn and figure out how we can be better. We did a lot of community involvement to help the community, charities, all kinds of stuff, and we just built like a really cool culture.
Mm-hmm.
So that sometimes when you grow fast and you sell, and then you get into different cultures, so to speak, sometimes it's not all the same culture. So I saw that happen a couple different times, and I was just like, there's we've already done this. There's a way. So why don't we now format it ahead of time and add structure to it, and just have a plan around it, because we had a lot of success doing it just on the fly the first time.
Do you see like sort of a tendency as all these companies grow that the culture slowly diminishes as companies get larger in scale?
I don't. Not. It's not always the case. I mean, I'll give our food distributor. I'll give them a nod right now, because they're a very large company, Shamrock, and meeting with the leadership team when we first got with them, they said, "Gosh, we kind of heard about what they do," and everyone was like, they were with different groups, and like, it's too good to be true. And then they got over with that team, and it's a big company, and they said, wow, they're a family business, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they run it like a mom and pop, and I was like, that's great to hear. So it can be done. I think there's restaurants that do it very well, and I just kind of want to have my own spin on it and do it. And we have a group of guys that all worked with us in the past. We just brought one more in to continue to try to get to this path. But I'll tell you one thing, it's easier said than done. It was a lot easier for me to have a team working with me, where I had 3 area managers, and I could focus, on culture, and everyone's kind of doing their thing. And I'm really just all about the people and the culture, and as top of running the business, and someone's handling all the back end stuff, the accounting and marketing and all these other things, right? And you you end up going, okay, now you got one restaurant, now you're sweeping the floor, and you're cooking tacos and doing all that, and making margaritas. So at times we're 5 years into this, and I know that our team knows, how passionate we are to them, and we are kind of like a big family. But there's so much more that we will be doing, that we're working on right now, that's exciting to us, just to get to that point where we were at before. But you have to have the resources and the people to be able to like help facilitate all of this awesomeness that we were doing in the past. And when you buy a restaurant with your friend and former colleague, and it's doing nothing in sales, you're just working the heck out of it, trying to build it up. So
When you guys bought that, did you see that as just a huge challenge that got you excited, or was it more like maybe we can get a good deal on it? Why was it something you pursued instead of going the other route
I think
you were
that,
working on?
we knew how busy it was back in the day. So we already saw how, the doors, I mean, the place was jam packed back in the day.
What had happened?
Just I think that when Chef Jeff left, a lot of people quit going there, which is probably unfair to his former wife, because he left, and they didn't give it another chance. They said, "Oh, the chef's gone, and we're just not going to go back." So there's part of that, and I think she tried expanding the concept. It didn't quite work, and I think that kind of just took the wind out of her sails, and she, probably just didn't execute at the level she probably could have after that happened. So
So tell us about then when you bought it. How's it gone? Have you been able to get it to a profitable level? And what would you say the keys are to what's happened the last few years to turn it around?
yes, we've got it to a profitable level. We've expanded. We've opened 2 more restaurants since then. Both of those we need to kind of get over the hump. They're newer and opening kind of just before the pandemic, and during the pandemic obviously wasn't
Yeah.
good timing. Um, but the keys are all just the basic keys of any restaurant operator. It's
And
just
what are those for
yeah.
somebody not in the
So
restaurant business?
executing food quality, executing hospitality, making sure that we're taking care of the guests from a service standpoint and having a clean restaurant. You hit those 3, you up the marketing, and there's a lot of compassion, and there's a lot of um, humility just with the team, and there's a lot of realness. Everyone, we try not to be robotic. We try to be genuine and kind when we serve people, and I think that our regulars have a rapport. They have a great rapport with a lot of our servers, and they come in, and if they're not there, they're where's Rosie, where's Yolanda, where's Jesus. They care about our employees, and the employees have this rapport with our guests too. So that just kind of builds loyalty. And us, Jeff and I, now Adam, Bobby, we're hands on. So we're owners, but we're in the restaurants a lot. Those guys all do more of the day to day, and I'm more behind the scenes, but I'm still there. And so I think there's something to guests seeing people that are the owners in their business, helping run it and facilitate it, and
Absolutely.
do care. Sadly, I remember with one of the previous concepts, we were winning a bunch of awards for franchise of the year and all this other stuff, and they kept saying, man, you guys just care so much. And I'm like, well, of course we care. It's our business. Like, why would you not care? But I think sometimes, maybe if it's the people that already have made it and have already, are financially set, and maybe take on a different venture or whatever, and they're not there, then they're just not there to help spearhead the passion behind the business, because that's what the customers are going to feel. Good or bad is probably the energy and the passion once you're in there.
Well, one thing I also noticed about your restaurants are the locations and the buildings themselves are really unique. I mean, the one in Scottsdale, I had driven by it, and I'm like, I just want to go and eat there to see the inside. And then I went, and the food was great. How important is that in success of a restaurant, or is that kind of you just got lucky with that location?
Kind of lucky with the Scottsdale location, and even luckier today with what the growth around it, going as Old Town continues to go south and towards Thomas, and now past Thomas, and what's going on with McDowell. So we're super fortunate and lucky as far as that timing with that one. And then the character of the building is just awesome. It's an old house, brick building. It's got that sweet patio,
Yeah.
Outside. And I think one of the biggest things with my dad and his 2 partners when they ate, and when we were talking about taking it over, and they were like, gosh, I don't know if I would replicate this. Like, this is too tough to replicate, and my comment was like, well, everyone should be able to eat this food. This food is different. It's so good. It's healthy. It's fresh. It's everything that, I don't want to say, it's everything that people just, it's so opposite of what you think Mexican food is, right? You're thinking chimichangas and burritos and a big
Like Tex-Mex sort of, yeah.
Tex-Mex, just plate full of food. That's what we grew up on.
Rice,
frankly.
beans,
and,
yeah.
and it's good. It is. We all grew up on it, and I grew up a big fan of it. But when you get into these different moles and different ingredients like wheat lecoche and these tomato salads and all these things on the plate presentation, and most of the plates, the rice and the beans are off on the side, so the star of the dish is it's a hero on the plate. And it's just, I mean, the complexity of the flavors and freshness around it, you eat a Pachuga Rania and that thing hits your mouth and you're like, what the heck is going on in my mouth? Like, this is so good. There's so much going on in your mouth and it's so good and so different than anything you've ever tasted.
So how did you manage to replicate that to the second store? And at what point did you make that
Well,
leap to opening a second one?
so we were kind of like, okay, let's see how fast we can grow this and get the sales to where it makes sense, to where we know, we this thing's working, right? And we were looking at the building. It's still not completely done, off Camelback and Central, and it's a suite building, and it's higher income, apartments and all of that. So we'd be
What was in there
downstairs.
before?
No, it's been that big building on Central on the south
It's the
east
the brewery, right? The
concept. So as we were driving to that, I looked over to the right and I saw this brick building. I said, "Oh, interesting. That looks just like our Scottsdale location."
Wow.
So I'm meeting the real estate broker. We go and I'm meeting the guy that owns the building that's buying it, that wants to do this really cool thing with it. And I'm like, "Gosh, this sounds awesome." And I also knew that it was going to be a higher price tag on converting stuff, because we're startups and we're kind of the little guys that are leaving their good career jobs and putting their nuggets together to try to make this work, right? So um, we're still pursuing it, and about 3 months later the broker calls and says, "Hey, Sun Up just came for sale." I said, "You gotta be kidding me. That's the spot we wanted." So shortly after that, we were fortunate to get that spot. We opened up in November of 19 and we didn't open up as well as I would have liked, and I think that is a learning moment for myself and the team, just going, hey, we Scottsdale's going really good, and we probably thought more people knew of us than they did. So we opened up soft, and then we were building sales. And then March, it was going pretty good when the pandemic happened.
and then March 2020.
Yeah, exactly. So, but during that time frame, there was a building for sale in Mesa too, and we kind of put an offer in to buy that business, knowing that they would have the equipment and everything in there. We weren't going to obviously operate the name of the Mexican concept we took over, but we weren't sure, as the Phoenix deal was going on. There's a lot of action and activity, so we didn't know if we're going to get that spot. And then on the other end, we weren't sure if we were going to get either one, and we went kind of aggressive on both, hoping we would get one, and we'd be fine if we got them both. And we ended up with them both. So then the pandemic hit. So then we're like, oh shoot, it would have probably been nice to only have one at that time.
How'd you survive during the pandemic?
I think that you learn a lot from yourself, the partners, and my wife. So we fought really, really hard to stay alive. Obviously the government help. Like, without that, we would have been, we would have had
Yeah.
to shut down for sure.
I don't
But
know how many restaurants would have survived without that.
I don't, unless you're in the fast food space with the drive-throughs
Right.
that had that teed up, or you're doing delivery with pizza already, then you're in a pretty good spot during that time. But for all the fast casuals and everyone else doing full service and higher end restaurants, you're just sitting duck. So
So you get the government help. Did you cut staff? Did
yeah,
you
we
try
cut
to?
staff, so we had to have the tough meeting with Scottsdale and Phoenix, and let them know that we're closing operations. That lasted all of, I think, 3 days before I wasn't sleeping. I started jotting on the notebook that I had next to me about like this drive-through concept, and then I'm like, how long is this going to go? How are our employees going to be able to eat without income coming in? So it was like, if we can somehow get this thing open, create a drive-through, and support the community and get it to where our employees can at least have a place to eat, then let's just get it back open. So the partners and I had a quick meeting and said, we want to do this. Obviously we're scared about this virus, and we're taking it seriously.
So that was to do a drive-through at
the current Los Sombreros,
in Scottsdale, or the
Scottsdale and Phoenix, but at the time we started with Scottsdale.
Yeah.
So we ended up starting with the drive-through. At that time, you could do margaritas to go. Well, now you can do it again. And our partner Adam, as we were talking through it, I'm like, what are we going to put these in? So Adam's like, how about the Patron bottles? Because our Steve Veritas Patron. I'm like, that's a great idea, you know. So it was a great idea. It wasn't exactly liquor board legal, but we rolled with it, and we had, I mean, you know, friends and family that know what you're going through, and then the regulars that are supporting their community restaurants. You know, it was mind blowing what happened that first weekend. You know, we had cars just lined up to get these Steveritas to go
Wow.
and food. You know, I think we were selling like 120 of these bottles. We're running out of the bottles, and it was crazy. So we're like, all right, well, let's do Phoenix. You know, so we tried it in Phoenix too, but you know, we had just opened up in Phoenix. People, they already had their restaurants that they were supporting, that, and we weren't one of them. So we banged our head on that Phoenix location for, you know, 7, 8, 9 months. We closed in December, you know, trying to hope it'd work. Now, what we got out of that was a lot of fulfillment with helping the community. We shut, we had a day where we helped out everyone that was out of work. We just gave them free bowls to help out the out of job people. We teamed up with Local First with this Feed Phoenix thing, and that was a blessing where we were facilitating food to help people that, you know, were challenged in being able to afford food at that time. So we did a lot of community outreach during that time for those 9 months, while we were just kind of, you know, trying to stay afloat, hoping we were going to turn the corner, but it didn't happen.
So you did the drive-through concept, really kind of drove some sales in the Scottsdale location. Did you do a lot of the DoorDash stuff and the mobile stuff?
Yeah, so we did we did, I think, four things. We did the drive-through. We created family meals, which everyone did. But we turned our restaurants into grocery stores. So my wife spearheaded that, Colleen, and you could do, she would do three different programs at kind of price levels. I think it was like $50, $75, or $100.
Yeah.
You know, so she would pick different produce out, meats out, Steverita, you know, and then toilet paper, because you couldn't get toilet paper. So we're pushing the toilet paper.
You're selling toilet paper out of the
restaurants.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
So
wow.
so they would order online through our website. We would bag everything up, and then they'd pop open the trunk. We were all masked up, gloved up, sanitized up, and then we would do so we became a grocery store for a few months.
Was that like when things were closed for the
Of course,
3
yeah.
or
The
4
grocery
months?
stores were open, but obviously so many people were scared to go in the grocery store
Right.
with everything going on. So we did that for probably 3 months, I'd imagine.
And then you kept some of that once the economy started to open back up again.
Yeah, you know, we got rid of the grocery store. We created a margarita van, so also not 100% street legal, but liquor board legal. We would go to the neighborhoods, and you know, we're trying to find a hero of the neighborhood where they'd get the group all together, and then we would go and sell burritos and margaritas to go. So we had a
Wow.
van that was all like music going, kind of like the ice cream truck, but
Ice cream
but-
margarita van.
ice cream margarita van, which everyone needed at that time. And then some of it, the DoorDash, we already had in play. So
Dude, so what now will stay has stayed in the restaurant to be something successful that you started during the pandemic? What's still there, and what you plan to keep?
well, the one more thing is I created a ghost kitchen too, called Carnitas Way. So doing burritos and bowls with our concept. So we've kept that, and we're trying to get that in a brick and mortar as we speak. And
Okay.
then we're the margaritas to go. We're still doing those. And the
Does
family
this-
meals, we're still doing those.
And it
the
still has the
margarita van.
drive-through too?
We don't have the drive-through anymore. No.
Okay.
We had to cut that off primarily because, you know, we had too many. There's too many. Scottsdale's too busy to have people driving in plus
Yeah.
trying to do a drive-through,
Yeah.
it won't work.
Well, it's
But
hard to get the permit, the drive-through permit. I don't know if you were kind of doing it under the radar or not, but
oh
it,
yeah, no, we were. I mean, we just put a TV and hooked up the USB and did a menu right there, and then we sat there with iPads.
okay.
So
Yeah.
we just kind of got creative with how we were doing that drive-through.
Yeah.
And then Scottsdale actually had a window that had never been lifted up. We like had to jam that thing up, and I borrowed my buddy. His family owns Spinato's Pizza. I got one of those big pizza boards, so to keep everything savvy, we'd put the food on the board and then hand it to the cars. So
Wow.
there's just a lot of fight from the team to stay alive, and a lot of will to just be like, we got to get through this. I mean, we're young and just starting this career of this entrepreneur path. So it's pretty bad timing. We can't just we're not 65 years old and been doing this for 30 years and like
Right.
it's a good time to shut up.
Yeah.
So I guess
Yeah.
that's my
Let's
cue.
Let's
So I think
Probably
some people, the
yeah.
decision was easy at that time that have been doing this their whole life and had some success, and we're like, you know what? I guess it's time for us to just, chill out and enjoy the grandkids. But that wasn't us. So
Because it's probably scary to like. It's obvious you have support in your own family, support your own support. Keep people in your life together and safe. But you also now you have employees, and they also have families that their paycheck is relying on. So it's probably hard, especially since it's like your first store too.
yeah,
Just
there's
hiring
no
first
doubt about it.
employees, but-
And when we open up even when we had the meeting, we're for opening back up. We said, "Oh, I'm sorry, guys, but right now it's just going to be Adam, Jeff, and I, and we can't even pay ourselves. So this is it. We're hoping to build this back up." And they're like, "Well, okay." And then, one employee from Phoenix said, "I'll volunteer. I'll just show up. You don't have to pay me. I'll just
Oh wow.
I'll just work and see how we can go." And then next thing you know, we had enough. I'm like, okay, let's bring on 2 more people. We had our 2 chefs to help cook the food too. So they came on, and then shortly it was like, bring on another chef, bring on another front, and it just added. And so yeah, here we are now. We made the decision, I think, in June. Also, because we're paying rent on the Mesa location, so we made the decision to open it up with the ghost kitchen. And I kind of left this out earlier. While I was creating that concept, the previous owners I worked for asked me to look after the Jerry's restaurants. There's 3 of them left. I'd never worked that concept, but my dad was a part of it. And so they asked me to be in charge of those 3. So during that time, I was kind of working on those. I was overseeing the 3 concepts and kind of doing it on like a part-time basis while I was creating my concept. Then I bought Los, and about June of 19 is when I closed the deal on. They shut down the Thomas one ahead of time, but I bought 2 Jerry's as well. So for Mesa, we opened up Mesa running Jerry's, Carnitas Way, and Los Sombreros all out of the kitchen. So we had 2 managers at the time that I wanted to make sure we would keep, and there wasn't enough hours, so that was like, well, let's open up this other deal, have those 2 work it, they can stay employed. It didn't really pencil, so then we had to start remodeling that Mesa location, and then finally got it open, and it's not even completely done. It's been like a 2-year project. We're probably a month out from having it buttoned up. We're doing a mezcal lounge upstairs. And you
Yeah,
had
I've been
it
there.
first
It's
time
beautiful. Yeah.
downstairs, right? So
Yeah.
we're at the very tail end. It's going to look a lot different upstairs than it did when we met. But,
Did
it's
your
almost done.
landlords give you a break, work with you?
Yeah, they did. It's kind of tagged onto the back end. One of my Jerry's landlords, actually both of my Jerry's landlords, forgave some rent, completely.
Yeah.
And some of the other ones, they all worked with us. It wasn't they were all easy. Some of it's on the back end, but it's fine.
I know Cheesecake Factory came out, a month into the pandemic saying they're not paying any rent. Subway did the same thing. and they just said, look, everyone's going to have to work with us. And when you have the power that Subway does and those big companies, you can do that. But I didn't know for a smaller
Yeah,
startup, if you
I didn't go in with thinking I had any real power on it, so I just asked, and everyone was understanding and forgiving, and I was like, all right, well, is this like forgiven, or and they're like, oh no, just tack it, pay me later, kind of like an IOU. So, so yeah, we're just making deals to where we can pay them off on a monthly, just up the rent a little bit this year.
So you talked about the things that are important to make a successful restaurant. What are the biggest pitfalls to these restaurants that don't make it, who don't thrive and do well? What happens?
Well, I think that it's always going to start from the top, right? Just any organization, restaurant business or not. So I think that one, you have to have a lot of passion and love for this business. It's a tough business. It's a tough business to make a buck. So there's got to be a lot of like sincerity as far as just like how you treat your employees. And this is, we've been speaking this language and preaching it for a long time. Now it's like, oh my goodness, what's going on in every industry with how tough it is to get employees right now. So, you have to just be willing to, be employee driven. I feel like you have to have good food. You have to have some type of ambiance these days. Good food just doesn't always cut it. It used to be like, okay, good food can be, you can have kind of subpar service or some people kind of mean or not overly friendly, I should say, and good food will kind of get there. Now, you got to hit on like everything. You got to have awesome ambiance, and you got to have obviously good food, but you got to have friendly staff, and the place has to be clean and organized. And it's just so competitive. I mean, look down the street, every single street, our whole city is nothing but restaurants. Everywhere, every place you look, they're all lined up in rows. I mean, just driving here, it's just restaurant after restaurant after restaurant after restaurant, and everyone's competing for the customer's dollar. So they can go anywhere. I mean, it's not like you mess up once and you're like, oh my goodness,
can a bad review really hurt the business on Yelp or
one
the
bad review is not going to do it. I think consistently over time, because everyone's going to have these bad reviews no matter how good you are.
Occasionally,
pretty much, occasionally something happens. And if you were to look up our reviews at Los Sombreros, you'd be like, wow, there's a ton of good reviews. And then you'd be like, oh, wow, there's some bad ones in there. But I think anyone that's got to be a Yelper and look at those reviews, they'll, everything's going to have a history and a trend to it. So you can be like, okay, they're 4.5 stars. Here's this bad review. And then you're like, oh, here's 8 of them in a row saying this is the best Mexican food they've ever had and how friendly the staff was. So this bad one, that just must have been a bad day for that person, or they just messed up, which is going to happen.
Yeah. So you've got 3 locations now. Where do you see the business going from here? Do you think you're going to try and get more locations, or are you happy with where it's at?
Yeah, so we'll get more locations. I'm not sure the timing on the Los Sombreros of when we'd get that 4th location. I think the other 2 need to catch up. So, the good news is we know the concept works because, we're 5 years into it, and we've basically 4x'd our sales and this time just under 5 years. So it works, and we know that there's probably a lot more revenue we can still do even at the Scottsdale building. So that's good. But with the 2 new locations, we definitely need to get those over the hump and get those humming a little bit more before we sit there and put more cash into that 4th location. Next would be get the Carnitas way in the building. Short term right now we're still figuring things out, but Sun Up, what we ended up taking over in Phoenix.
That's like a brewery, right?
Yeah, it's Sun Up Brewery, and it was Sun Up Brewery and Kitchen. We took over the kitchen and the patio. They kept the tap room. They just emptied out the bottles of the beers. They still have the building just east of that as well, to where they're still continuing to run Sun Up. But we just took over the operations of Sunup last week, and we are, instead of their employee selling the beer, we could already sell our food in there. Now we have our employee selling their beer and our menu. So this is super, super new. It just happened. We're not sure what the end all be all of that space is going to be, but on the short run, you can go in and get Sunup's beer from 4 to 10 every day, and eat our food. I think what we'll end up doing is probably looking at adding some more bar food on that side, and then we're waiting to get to the city. In that tap room, it's because they had all the bottles of beer on one side that was glassed off. There's still a significant amount of space, so the hope is to take that space and create a Carnitas Way drive-through back there. So we got to get permitting through the city and all of that. So my hope is to potentially have that going, and then we'll see where the sun up if we continue to operate it or if we use that for overflow of Los Sombreros. We're not sure just yet, but essentially we could be running 3 concepts out of those 2 buildings.
Wow.
Fairly shortly.
And when did that open on Camelback?
No, it reopened February 3rd of this year,
Okay.
and it opened November 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But reopened
Reopened February
just
3rd.
last month. Okay.
Yeah. So we're super excited. It felt so good to be opening up a restaurant after having a,
Yeah.
close one.
We'll be coming there because we're right in the neighborhood. So
Yeah,
food
please.
is great.
Please do.
We'll be there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Last
Great.
question. I'm a college student. I go to Grand Canyon University.
Oh, sweet.
And I'm curious, what would your advice be, kind of general advice for someone wanting to pursue something entrepreneurial, maybe start a business? They're in college and they don't know exactly what they want to do. Maybe what's an industry that you think they should pursue right now, and what's just some general advice you would give to a college student?
Yeah, of course. To start with, like, what are you passionate about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the idea is for you to end up with whatever, business you're doing, job you're into, of something that it just doesn't feel like work. You're excited to get up and get dressed to go to whatever that is. So you always want to start with that, right? Because, that's where I'm at. I'm like, this is, yeah, I can have a 17, 18-hour day. My body will be tired, but I'm excited to get back up and do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd start with that. And then, depending on what your passions are, then you just got to come up with, a realistic business plan, and I think that things as far as starting a business, it can be overwhelming. It can be scary. There's always a cost that is associated with it, but a lot of that just kind of falls into like, okay, what am I passionate about? Okay, can I get the experience and learn, from someone else who's been in that and get in that field and learn it, And, I had a buddy that told me, he said, I just had a guy, he told me, in your 20s, you get in, you work the business, you learn it, your 30s, you protect it, you perfect it, in your 40s, you own it. And I kind of started laughing because here I am, 43, and I'm seeing so many of my friends now owning businesses that didn't own them 10 years ago, 5 years even. And I was like, gosh, there's a lot of truth to that. Now, if I could turn back the clock and say, let me jump into this, 15 years ago after 5 years of experience, or maybe 10 years experience or whatever, I probably would have loved to do that. My head was there. The passion to do what I'm doing now was there, timing and the golden handcuffs, as they like to call them, when you have a good solid income and a good future and you're on cruise control, then it's tough to get away from that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to anytime you start a business, if you're a long-time professional, it just depends on where you're at. You got to take a significant financial cut at times and grind it out until you can build it back up.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the case for at least myself and my partners. We had to go that route. So I'd find something you're passionate about that you love, and see if it's something that you think you can do right away, or just primarily get in with someone that's already doing it and learn. And whenever you feel you're kind of ready, you're probably ready sooner than you think you are.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.